The RHY had never understood the concept of love. Their civilization, forged in the molten storms of a gas giant's moon, prized cold efficiency and unwavering obedience above all else. They bred soldiers in great nutrient vats, each warrior designed to follow commands without hesitation, without emotion, without question. To them, bonds were dangerous distractions, delicate threads that could fray under pressure and doom entire campaigns. Their leaders, the high strategists, saw every feeling as a crack in the perfect armor of conquest. And so, when the human arrived, battered and alone, they did not fear him. They pitied him. Captain Jonathan Price had been shot down during a skirmish on the edge of RHY territory. His escape pod crashed into the frozen plains of their forward base, leaving him half buried in ice and scorched debris. When their patrol dragged him from the wreckage, they expected a begging, broken creature. Instead, they found a man who looked them in the eyes, even as he bled onto the snow. He should have been executed immediately, but curiosity stayed their hand. They had heard rumors of human defiance, of this strange species that fought even when reason said surrender. Now they had a living specimen to study. They locked him in a cell of black alloy, fed him ration paste, and asked endless questions about Earth's tactics and fleet movements. Price gave them nothing. Instead, he spoke of home. He told stories of wild thunderstorms over Mississippi fields, of his mother's fried chicken, of the dog who waited for him each dawn at the gate. He described teammates who would die for each other without hesitation, not because of orders but because they cared. The guards scoffed at his words. Love? Sacrifice? These were luxuries that would dissolve under the weight of true war. Yet, after each interrogation, some of the guards lingered outside his cell listening. One night, a young RHY warrior named Vesh entered Price's cell alone. Vesh had only recently been decanted from the vats, barely old enough to wield a plasma blade. His carapace still shimmered with the sheen of fresh growth, and his mind swirled with new directives and silent drills. Vesh demanded to know, why speak of family? Why share such weakness when strength was the only currency? Price looked at Vesh, really looked, not as a target or a monster but as a person. Because love isn't weakness, Price said, voice raspy but steady. It's what makes you fight harder than any order ever could. When you love someone, you don't run. You don't stop. You stand back up even when your bones scream. Vesh trembled. For the first time, he realized no directive had prepared him for this quiet, burning thing in the human's eyes that seemed stronger than any blade. Over the following cycles, more guards came. Some pretended to mock, but they stayed to hear about human families, about teammates who carried each other from the rubble. They returned again and again, until they began to share pieces of themselves. One guard admitted they sometimes felt a pull toward their batchmate, a warmth they didn't understand and were trained to ignore. Another confessed to hesitating before striking down a wounded foe, an act that haunted their nights. Slowly, they learned to speak of these things without shame. And Price listened to every confession, nodding, encouraging, never mocking. The high strategists noticed a shift in discipline. Guards missed formations, soldiers faltered during drills, eyes drifted toward each other with an unspoken question. Concern spread through the upper echelons like a virus. It was too late. The first attack came from a distant human fleet that had traced Price's beacon. The RHY garrison scrambled to repel the landing squads. But instead of turning on each other in panic, instead of rigidly obeying failing orders, the guards formed new squads on their own, protecting each other instinctively. Vesh led a group of young soldiers into the front line, not because of command subroutines, but because they refused to let their new clutchmates die. In the chaos, they released Price. Instead of escaping, he grabbed a fallen plasma rifle and joined them in the trenches, shouting orders and pulling wounded warriors to safety. When Vesh was pinned under a collapsing support beam, Price dragged him out with bare hands, roaring so loud it cut through the barrage. "Get up, soldier! I'm not leaving you," he yelled, tears and soot streaking his face. The human's courage ignited something inside the RHY. They began to shout each other's names, a thing once forbidden. They fought not as machines, but as a swarm bound by a new purpose, not for territory or strategy, but for each other. They adapted faster than any prior algorithm could predict, covering each other's flanks, risking themselves to save comrades who had once been just faceless units. By dawn, the human fleet withdrew, stunned by the unexpected ferocity of the defense. The RHY base still stood. Price collapsed in the aftermath, exhausted and bloodied, but alive. Around him, the RHY gathered in silence. Then Vesh stepped forward and knelt, offering a blood-stained ceremonial blade. "We thought love would shatter us," Vesh said, voice trembling. "But you showed us it is the only shield that never breaks." Price pulled Vesh into a shaking embrace, grinning through his tears. "That's right," he whispered. "It's the strongest thing we have." From that day forward, the RHYKel began to record names, to acknowledge bonds. They no longer saw love as a contaminant, but as their new core strategy, the element that turned obedient weapons into true warriors. In the years that followed, they transformed into a people unrecognizable from their cold past. They fought side by side, carried each other from countless battlefields, and sang songs of fallen heroes. All because one human refused to see love as weakness. In loving them, he gave them not just victory but a future,